Satan, 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 our Lord and Master, I acknowledge thee as my God and Prince. I promise to serve and obey thee as long as I shall live. I renounce the other God and all the saints.
Don't listen to them!
Satan.
Don't listen to them!
Welcome back to the Ave Satanis podcast. My name is Jack Violently. I'll be your host today. If you'd like to reach out to us, drop us an email at avesatanispodcast@gmail.com. The ASP is a production of the Free Society Satanist. We are a worldwide collective of anarchistic Satanists underneath the banner of the Global Order of Satan. For more information, check out our website, freesocietysatanists.com, where you can find a link to join us on Discord, where you can be a part of all the devilish good times that we are having over there. One final thing, guys. If you enjoy this podcast, you find value in what we're doing, we would greatly appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to. It just really helps out the algorithm. Well, today we are finally joined by David from Queer Satanic. Queer Satanic is a collective of Satanists that no matter how long you've been in the know, you have known about. Twitch streams, YouTube channels, blogs, subreddits, contributing editors to the Satanic Wiki, and, oh yeah, they were sued by Corpo Satan a few times, I think, and won. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, join me in welcoming Queer Satanic. What's going on, dude?
Howdy. Thanks for having me on. I was looking forward to talking to you. I've been listening to your podcast for a little while. I think I may have even heard the first version of it back in the day, and then disappeared. So there's so many that it's hard to keep track of them.
Really? You heard the first 6 episodes? So our mics were real low and you could barely hear it, and we were putting music in them?
Maybe. But, I try to just, try to keep up with what other people are doing just to be aware. So I think I remembered one of them that was like focused on like study, or am I mixing it up with a different one?
Study. I don't know I think one, that may be another one. I don't know if we did one on study or not.
I definitely started listening to like this iteration of it when it came around.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed the stuff that y'all have done. I also enjoy just the stuff you're doing with Free Society of Satanists.
I appreciate it.
I'm glad to come.
So, much like Inside the Actor Studio with James Lipton, he always gives his guests the 5 questions, and they're all generally the same. I like to start off with the same question for everyone. So kind of give us like a brief rundown of your journey to finding Satanism. What kind of initially drew you to the path?
Sure. So I'm originally from West Texas. I am the son of a Southern Baptist pastor. I was in church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night. This is very common. West Texas is a very Christian place. It's the kind of place where people ask you, what's your home church? So I live in Seattle now. It is very different, and I do appreciate that. But still, while I was in Texas, I was someone like I read the Bible for fun. I still do. I still enjoy reading the Bible, actually. But like the more I studied it, was like, oh well, this is not true, right? And then by that I mean like, oh, there's not just different translations. There's different like textual traditions. Like the Septuagint is different from the Masoretic, is different from the Latin Vulgate, and like there's been like different versions of like different like books that are in the Bible and different versions of books, that kind of thing. So that started to weaken it. And I think the thing that really made me make the leap over into just like atheism was when I realized that people didn't really believe in their prayers. Like this may be an obvious thing to other people, but it wasn't until I was like 18, 19 maybe, when I realized that people pray for like cancer to go away or for like a certain problem to be solved, but they never pray for like a limb to regrow, right? You don't. So like, there was a guy who was my age. He got diagnosed with cancer because his leg broke because they had a tumor in his knee, and everyone said, praise God, right? They found the cancer. Well, they had to amputate the knee, if like from like that down. And he was getting chemo, and then he was clear, and they said, praise God, the chemo, cured the cancer, and it turned out that it hadn't came back.
Yeah.
Right. Now, he did survive. It ended up going away. But like what I noticed was people were praying for God to intercede in the usual human affair, like the natural rule, to suspend all the regular rules to cure this cancer. But nobody was like, grow that leg back.
Right.
Because people just understand that's impossible. And so I think that was like the emotional thing to complete the like intellectual thing of, you don't have to be a Christian and believe the Bible is this, perfect, inerrant thing, but that's how I was raised thinking it.
Right.
And so then I was an atheist for a while. I had, cringy anti-theist phase, I would say. I was very into Dawkins and Hitchens, like those kinds of things. I probably stayed in that phase too long before I moved out of it. But then I started going to a thing called Seattle Atheist Church. That was cool. People like gave talks. But what I'm about to say will probably be used against me in the future, but it's probably the most accurate thing. If someone were to ask me what my religion is, probably the most accurate thing to say is that I am a Christian. What kind of Christian am I? I am a atheist satanic Christian, right? What does that mean?
Okay.
Is that my worldview was baked in with Christianity, right? Like the way that I think about time, the calendar, it's Christian. The holidays that I like think about as like being like normal ones, Christian. They're not Jewish. Like I've dated a Jewish person, and it was great, but like the way that they saw the world was different because how you count time, how you celebrate, how you think of yourself, these are all different. So even though I don't have any lingering belief in, no part of me thinks there's a heaven or hell. No part of me thinks that Jesus Christ came down to save the sins of mankind. But like culturally, I don't know that I will ever like stop being Christian fully in that sense. Does that distinction make sense to you?
Yes, and that is such a this is going to be the wrong word. That's such a crazy way to look at it, because 99.9% of other Satanists that you talk to will say, I am anti-Christian. But you still go over to your parents' house and celebrate Christmas. You don't really celebrate, but you go over there and like partake in the, and then you still, maybe your family has an Easter thing where you don't really do the ceremony, but you just go over there and kind of zhuzh and spend time. That is phenomenal, man. Like, I still very much get giddy over Christmas. Like I'm not talking about like the nativity scene or anything like that, but just the hoopla of the Christmas season, which is a Christian/pagan, depending on how far back you want to go, holiday. Like that's the main one. And so, I would say most other Satanists, if they are walking it like they talk it, still kind of halfway celebrate, the other Christian holidays, just not in the same way.
Yeah.
That's wild, man.
Right. And some of this was, really like made more obvious to me when I was working on a project where I had to interview a lot of Jewish people in an area. And like there was like some set questions. And one of them was like, is there a mezuzah on your door? Is there like, one of the scrolls that's like up there? Yeah. One of them was like, do you fast for Yom Kippur? I think like those were like some of them. And sometimes a person would be like, no, I'm an atheist, right? I'm not those things. But like they were, they were raised Jewish basically, right? But you would say like, do you have a mezuzah on your door? Even after they've said like they have no belief in God. And they're like, well, of course I didn't take it down, right? I moved in and was there, I didn't take it down.
Sure.
And it's like, so do you fast on Yom Kippur? Obviously, I fast on Yom Kippur. And so it's like the idea that to me, religiosity is a lot more practice-based. Like that's a lot more important to me than orthodox beliefs. Because, beliefs are what Christianity has traditionally focused on. And I think that shortchanges just how much your way of thinking what is normal is impacted by, your religious cultural assumptions. Like you can't really tie those, you can't pull those apart
Right.
because like what is religious dress is a thing that is usually when Christians talk about it, they're thinking about Muslims, they're thinking about, really Orthodox Jewish people or there's other religions. But what Christianity considers to be normal dress is not really secular. We just call it secular.
Sure.
So that sort of thing. So does that make it clear, like what I mean? Like I am an atheist, I am a Satanist, but like culturally, I haven't stopped. I haven't gotten to a place where I think about time differently, or I have holidays that aren't just Christmas, but black, that aren't just like Halloween, but spookier, like that's sort of like the Satanist holidays that I have seen from other people.
I've thought that. So I've called myself a Satanist for 3 years, but I've lived kind of by the very overarching belief structure for about 15 years. And I've never thought of it in those terms. You don't stop the Christian, in my case, the Southern Christian mindset, just because that's freaking wild. And to add on to something that you said at the very beginning, you growing up in West Texas. So in the Southeast, we would call that the Bible Belt. And I would imagine that West Texas is the big fajita plate belt buckle on the Bible Belt. So like you guys, that's probably the end of it. And that is the big brass belt buckle on that Bible Belt. I wanted to throw that in there too. I was kind of chuckling when you said that.
West Texas is a weird place because it is, like I said, deeply religious. What is your home church is a non-ironic question. People ask that. They expect you to have an answer to it. Yeah. But it's also a place where people move there for oil. Like if oil did not exist under the ground, nobody would be in West Texas. There's not much reason to be there other than that you can pull it out of the ground and make lots of money. So lots of young men in particular move there, work 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, drink a lot, do a lot of drugs, and some of them end up staying around, and then they end up being, very Christian for whatever reason. So there's this mix of the capitalism of people just like, no, I'm just trying to make that money. I'm just going to be there a few years. I'm going to get rich and then I'm going to move somewhere else. And people that have a couple kids, settle down. Now they're invested and want to make sure their kids are, raised right. Don't make the same mistakes, etc.
I was going to say I drank and did a lot of drugs, but I fell further away from it. That's wild. But I digress. That was weeks ago. No. So tell me a little bit. So how did Queer Satanic come to be formed? I kind of understand it now as it's more of a collective of Satanists rather than just you and Nathan.
Not really. How did Queer Satanic come to be formed? We got sued. That's what it was, right? That's all. There was an original idea when we were still in TST to have a memes page called Evergreen Memes for Queer Satanic Fiends, right? It was just supposed to be a light thing that was making jokes about Satanist things, things from a more leftist perspective. Because, you can get away with saying things that are a bit more radical when you're doing it in a joking way, as opposed to, paragraphs or an essay. That was sort of the original idea. And then when they started suing the four of us, and again, it was not exactly a targeted lawsuit because some people didn't get sued who you might have expected to. Nathan didn't do anything. He was on leave. He got so Nathan started the Seattle chapter of TST, the one that became the Washington State chapter back in 2014, I believe. So he was in for 5 years, a little bit more than that. And while he was on medical leave because he was stressed out from his job and also volunteering for so long, he suddenly couldn't get into the Discord anymore. I don't think he ever got an email or anything. He just suddenly was just kicked out with no communication.
Wow.
And then a few weeks after that, he got sued. He just got served papers. So they invented a conspiracy about I don't know, it was something they had stolen documents, but again they never communicated with him. They never even said, here are the specific things you have that we want back. And in 4.5 years of being sued, they never said this is specifically the items that we are alleging that you took and want back. So sometimes you will think, well, as long as I don't do anything wrong, I'll be okay. No, Nathan just was sitting at home.
He was just catching strays, it sounds like.
Yeah. So, so we weren't the four of us, me, Nathan, and two other people. We weren't trying to be any kind of group. We just were lawsuit defendants. And in fact, because we were being sued and TSD was, being pretty aggressive at targeting people around us, even people that supported us, they would threaten, we kind of had to not pull anybody inside and expose them to that. So, it was isolating. I think that was the point. That worked. There was a lot of things that nobody else could do because that could make them, potentially added on and have dragged through years of litigation. But we did have people that we could work with. Like, for example, someone who was not sued was kind enough to host a website for us. And so that way they were paying for it, which was nice. But also just that, like, we could not ultimately like take it down. Like if the worst thing happened, they could just kick us off of our accounts and then they would still have it,
Yeah.
Same thing with the Satanic Wiki. The admin of that has been, very kind, doing a lot of like very helpful work, but I don't own that. Like I am someone who contributes edits to it, but I'm not like a special user. I just am someone who can create an account and, edit stuff. And so like, that's the sort of thing that we were doing. And as lawsuit, went on year after year, we got whittled down, even Nathan is, taking a lot more rest. I took some rest as well. And so what we're trying to do now is just like build up into what something long-term would look like. Like now that we've survived lawsuits, like what does it look like? I don't want to keep doing this forever. In fact, it would be great if other people did these things instead of me. But I also don't just want to like dump stuff off onto someone else. So that's sort of like what we are. We are a collective, but really it's more just like a vibe. That's the article name anyway.
So it sounds like to me like the lawsuit kind of formed you guys. Like there was just a bunch of people who were collectively getting sued, and you guys were like, well, there's safety in numbers. Let's kind of meet up. And is that kind of?
No, I mean, it wasn't there was safety in numbers. It's like we couldn't afford 4 different legal teams.
Right. But like kind of meeting up in the guise of like we're all going through this together. Let's just kind of huddle together and weather the storm type of situation.
I wouldn't even describe it that way. Okay. It was more like we didn't have a choice but to be together in some way. One of the people dropped out pretty quick. Like his life situation was real bad. I guess he's talked about this openly, so I can share it as well. When this started early on, he attempted to fatally self-harm. He survived. He's okay.
Awesome.
But like that's how like stressful it was early on. Whereas like the thing, this is COVID. This is like people's like jobs are not safe, and like now you have an abusive religious organization coming after you. That was really bad. Someone else. We had been dating at the start of it, and after a couple of years, the stress, meant that we stopped dating, and also like they needed to take a break, and that break ended up being an indefinite hiatus. So then it was just me and Nathan that were doing most of these things, and like nobody signs on to go through this kind of stress, and so trying to find people that can be helpful and offer help and actually follow through on it, but not so much that they could then like find themselves serve favors. That was what Queer Satanic was for 4.5 years.
And really, so I could imagine anytime anybody finds the first couple of days of this organization, they never think to themselves, my religious affiliation or my philosophical affiliation is going to sue me over. For most of the ones that I've heard, it's pretty innocuous shit, man. It's like what you guys were talking about, like posting memes and shit, or like just. I mean, I'm sure the context of some of these memes were harsher than others, but at the end, it's still just sharing stupid memes. And
what I'd say is that they work backwards from not wanting to be criticized. Like that's what it is. And the term someone came up with it, and I've shamelessly kept using it, is a Scientology for Molgoths. I think Scientology for Molgoths is less and less funny, and more than just that's what it is.
Right.
I've done some work going back and seeing that all the way back to their first high priest. It was High Priest Brian Warner, and that's the Vital Remains lead singer, not Marilyn Manson.
I was about to ask.
He was the first high priest, yeah. And when he left in late 2014, so he came on in like June of 2013. He left in like December of 2014. I won't say all his reasons were good. Like I disagree with that guy on all kinds of stuff, like whether women should be able to have abortions. He didn't think that they should. The first high priest of TST went on talk shows saying that he didn't think that his like partner should be able to have an abortion without him like assenting to it.
Wow.
He's also the guy that was the Satanist for Trump guy in 2015. So anyway, he was though the first guy to be like, hey, Lucian Greaves, Doug Masicko, we were friends, like we were like brothers. You came to my house, and now you're like trying to make me sign a NDA, a non-disparagement or a non-disclosure agreement. Like, what is this, Scientology? So all the way back in 2014, people were already making that comparison, and they've gone on to do it to people. First, they said, well, you signed a contract, you signed an NDA, now you're violating it, so we're going to sue you. That happened in 2018, if not before. With us, they claimed defamation, and they claimed like hacking, like they're like cyber crimes. Like this is all like bullshit. Because,
sure, absolutely, yeah.
Like they had 4.5 years to make any of this stick, and they failed. And it's not because the court hates Satanists, because they were suing Satanists. They just suck. They suck at what they do and didn't have like good law for it. But then with Newsweek, they sued them for defamation, and the reporter too, because they said. I think it was that if only you had written this on your own private blog, we wouldn't sue you, but you published it in Newsweek. That's almost all been tossed out. But then they sued the Satanic housewife, right? So like, they're always like moving the goalposts on what it is, and they're always threatening people and doing this stuff because they believe in like the freedom to offend and free speech, but they really only mean that for like neo-Nazis and fascists and them saying whatever they want, not you saying things about that.
So one of the things that you had said at the very beginning of that was they didn't like being like kind of called out. They didn't like kind of having the focus turned back on them. And so I've said this in an earlier episode, but it bears repeating. I truly believe that every Satanist worth their salt should ultimately live by the scientific method, meaning if new evidence comes along, we're never stuck on one path. If somebody goes, hey, like I've been thinking about this, maybe what if this is wrong? It always gives you time to course correct and stay on the correct path rather than double down and just veer off course.
Sure.
So like we live by logic and reason. Logic dictates that this is now new information gathered. This is now an incorrect, solution. Let's pivot. And suing people for being called out or for being called out on your bullshit, it sounds more cult leader than satanic leader, because like, okay, so I'm a co-founder of the Free Society Satanist. If you ever came to me and said, hey Jack, I think, I've been looking through your stuff here and I think this one little point here is kind of astray. What do you think about that? That's now another point of light that I can go, oh, turn it 10 degrees, fix it. And now we're keep going in the right direction. I don't see the value of not taking constructive criticism or even harsh criticism. It just doesn't, I don't see where that's a bad thing. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, I would not say that I have seen a substantive difference between Satanists and other people at like facts and logic and whatnot. Like I have not noticed that in the community. I know I'm situated differently from other people, but like you were saying, when it comes to Satanic Temple, when people have emotionally put a stake in this organization, there are some people who just don't want to learn anything else, or they learn stuff and just choose not to care.
right.
That's a big thing that I've noticed about people that left, after 2020, who knew about all of the racist stuff and the cargo cults and the lawsuits against people for speaking up. And they would even say when they left, well, I don't want to speak up because I don't want to get sued. So
Right.
like, they knew staying in the organization, they were part of an organization that might do that, and they were okay with it until they got like personally insulted or their friend, and so I understand that the best time to leave a bad organization is like now, like that's the soonest you can do. That's the best.
Sure.
But there's a part of me that finds it difficult to have a ton of grace for people who then like don't unpack all the other stuff. Who don't go like, I really shouldn't have helped an organization that I knew was doing all of this stuff, and how am I going to make sure in the future I don't do that again?
Right.
As opposed to just like, the problem was two guys that sucked, and we're going to do everything else the same, but without those two guys, it'll be great. It's a disaster.
And really, like, so what would be the worst case scenario of like learning from that and pivoting is you have to change your letterhead.
Yeah.
Like at that point, come on, it's clerical shit at this point. If you're not going to learn, you're not going to grow from it. What's the freaking point of what's the point of any of this? One of the questions, so you and I have talked offline quite a bit. This may or may not be a pivoting question here. We may stay on the course, or we may stray here. Come to find out. So you've mentioned to me in messages offline that like you like to build networks instead of hierarchies. or hierarchies.
Yeah.
I'm a Southern guy with a very poor education. That either one of those words sounds correctly.
It's got too many syllables for me. I don't like it. I don't trust it.
Can you tell us like a bit more about the building networks instead of hierarchies? What's one of the most treasured networks that you've kind of had your hand in cultivating?
Sure.
Or if you can talk about that, rather.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm an anarchist, so that's part of it. Like, why do I feel this way? I think anarchism is good.
Yeah.
I think I first noticed y'all when you described yourself as anarcho-Satanist, and I was like, hell yeah, brother.
Yeah.
But I think hierarchies seem more stable than like more flat organizations, because they just let you externalize all of the harm. You get to say, well, those people don't count, and so when they leave, it's not a big deal. Or these people are allowed to do whatever they want, and you just have to be quiet about it. You just have to shut up and get over it. And I do think that, anarchists and just, people in general can do better at conflict resolution, about like picking what is actually important to talk about and giving people a chance to do better. Like these sort of things are real difficult problems, but hierarchies don't have that, because you just say, I'm the one who has the power. Either you do what I say or you get out, or there's repercussions or whatever.
Right.
I also think I've just seen so many satanic organizations specifically, but not just Satanism, that has these like small groups, and they end up just being tyranny writ small. Like, I think the Catholic Church, real bad, don't like Catholic Church. But sometimes people will say, when you criticize the Church of Satan or Satanic Temple, oh, so like, you must like the Catholic Church, or it's nothing compared to the Catholic Church. It's like, yeah, well, neither is Scientology. Neither was Charles Manson's group or David Koresh. Like, they're smaller. Things can be small and still be really bad and unnecessarily bad. Right. And I think when you have hierarchies and you don't have institutional guardrails, or like a culture of what accountability looks like and transparency, and especially when you're basically like pulling in people with religious trauma who don't have a good model to compare it to, that's ripe for exploitation.
I can see that. Yeah.
I think it's a bad thing. Unfortunately for Satanists, there's just not that many of us, so we tend to like, I don't know, just like Pokemon, it's just like Discord servers, and
yeah.
Discord servers are hierarchical. There's no way around it. Like, there is an admin, and so it's like, that's a hard thing. So how do you build networks? I think an important thing that I have seen Global Order of Satan do, and I've tried to encourage, is having more people in more of these servers, even when they're not like part of the same organization, more people having one-to-one relationships, more people being able to compare notes. Because right. I think actually the biggest thing that TST hated was people being able to compare notes about things. Because when they do, when that happened, you're like, oh, well, actually, this isn't a new problem. This has been going on for 10 years, Oh, actually, yeah, that guy has been doing that like creepy stuff for ages, right? Like whisper networks and things. And I don't think that this is a problem that's ever solved, because we're human beings and things are always in flux. But the fewer people that have coercive power, including like clout over others, the better. And I think like that's a better recipe for long-term success, is that there's no one node that can like take everything down. There's no like person at the top that you rely on. It's lots of people doing everything they can to share. And, that's what I had seen from Global Order of Satan and, Still City, specifically, of like reaching out to people, helping them, even people that were not looking to join a GOS. Like the capital area Satanists, I think, are pretty friendly. And as far as I know, have no desire to join. But,
yeah, I don't think so now.
But, you can still collaborate. And I think that is a useful thing, is like being able to collaborate, share, appreciate one another, learn from each other. But there's no boss. Everyone is there because they want to be. And if they didn't want to be there, they could leave. And that's not like losing your entire like friend network, because that's also a thing that happens sometimes in cults. And also people in TST may have noticed this, that when they leave, a lot of people stop talking to them.
Right.
And, like it would be very obvious to say, oh yeah, like Jehovah's Witnesses, that's shunning. But in TST, they're like, oh yeah, well, you can't talk to them. Like and sometimes they'll be like vague about it. But like now, if you're someone who you're like in your 30s, maybe it's hard to meet people. You're maybe a little awkward. Maybe move to a new place. Your entire social life has become this group.
Right.
And somebody locally or nationally did something you don't like. your choice is lose all of that and start over, or just put up with it. And I think a lot of people put up with it. So we're trying to build networks where people can kind of like form collectives that work in different projects. And then, sometimes people don't like each other. It's not like a moral thing. It's just like, you just don't vibe. And that's okay. Like, neither one of you is bad. You just like, don't click. And that's okay.
So we share that same belief. And so I actually spent 0 days inside TST. I feel like I should have a war badge for that. Like I missed action or something. But the group that I came from and the core people from Free Society came from, once we kind of found our own Discord and we found other kind of GOS adjacent or GOS groups, the first server that I was ever on was House of Heretics. I remember because I found them through, God, I don't even know how the hell I found them, but I think I found them through Facebook. And I was like, cool, I'm going to join this server. And within 2 days, Gray messaged me. He's like, what's up, bud? How you doing, man? You're new around here. And I'm like, oh, shit. I'm not used to people being nice because the group that I came from, people were kind of jerks. Yeah. And like, especially like people in leadership. I was like, holy crap, dude, we're kind of the same. We're both these goofy kind of like weird kind of characters. And then, being reunited with people like Tomoe. So it kind of spread the network of like, this is going to be okay. Like, I now know that there are people outside the gates who want the same thing. And I think a saying that would go well with what you were talking about, I've said this a lot, is a rising tide raises all ships. I firmly believe that sharing information, I was telling Gray, I was like, if you ever want to do a podcast, I will give you my entire playbook. I will show you how I record, how I edit, like the shit that I buy, like all of it. It's yours. We need more content out there. And, I tell Tomoe too, she used to be on Satanic in Nature with Cora, I believe. I was like, anybody who needs to do anything like that, come to me. I got you. I'll give you the playbook. I'm kind of helping the Gospod people now with editing and doing stuff like that too. So yeah, I mean, building networks is far more beneficial because it shows kind of like the grassroots organization. You can watch it spread. And you're like, I know I joined right here, but I was helpful and I got help in this regard. I'm doing a lot of hand gestures. I realize a podcast is a listening format. Listeners are getting nothing from this.
The energy comes through.
Right. Energy does come through. But yeah, no, I kind of take a lot of value in what you were saying there is like just being a voice for good and then kind of watching and seeing how it spreads. And there's other people outside the gates of TST. If you're listening to this, you're still in or whatever like that. Like, there's a massive group outside the city walls and we all want the same thing and we're all working towards a common good. And one thing that I'm noticing is very rarely are there kind of schisms. Are there like arguments? Arguments come and go because we are human beings, but they don't turn into what I've heard arguments from TST sounded like they were. Like they just they get talked through like rational human beings. Oh my God. Like imagine that.
Yeah, and I think it's still a thing that is somewhat likely to happen and probably in the future. And this is not, again, because GOS or other groups are doing anything wrong, but just because, like you said, people are human. And it seems like they, having talked to them and like set in on one of their, explanations, it seems like they have a good system set up for when things go bad. I think I've said this before, but it's very easy to make any system when people like each other and getting along. Very, very hard to have a system that works well when people don't like each other and aren't getting along.
Right.
And it seems like they have like put some thought into that to like have a group that has, lasted since 2018, which is that's one of the longer lasting stable groups that I am aware of. Right. Like most of them, like they're around like 2-3 years and then it all kind of, implodes, colony collapse happens.
Right.
So it seems like they're doing some good things. And I also think even on an individual level, having networks is good because, like you're saying, you're sharing your skills. You've heard like the phrase before: "The graves of the world are filled with indispensable people." Everybody thinks they're indispensable, but we all die, and all of us, get tired, and all of us, no matter how useful I think I am at my job or at my union or doing this stuff. I get hit by a bus, right? That's it. Like I can't do it. So if I have not done a good job of making sure that nobody notices when I'm gone, like that's the goal. The goal is that if you disappear, the work itself would go on uninterrupted. And that's hard. It's hard because it's easier for me often to do one more thing than train somebody else and get them prepared to do that thing not as good. And, but
Sure.
for long-term stability, that's the goal. Like you're saying, if everybody knows how to make a podcast, maybe something goes on in your life and you take a 6-month hiatus, but people can still keep doing it. That's what you want. You want it so that if you need to take a step back or just be replaced or whatever, the work can still happen. And that's sort of what I think networks are better at than hierarchies.
And I feel like people who've listened to the Ave Satanis podcast can tell that I'm an indispensable part of this show as being the dancing monkey with the cymbals. That's me. Chris is the good ideas of the show, and Sai is the voice of reason. I'm just the guy that speaks the loudest. So they're like, here, get in front of the mic. Go. You do it. So, yeah, if I were to go away, people wouldn't miss me too much. I would say they would probably get better content out of it. They would probably get more well thought out and well put together content. But
I think you would be missed. People would miss you specifically, but hopefully you get to a place where you can take a break and the podcast can still come out and be edited and be promoted and all of those things. Guests can be booked. But it's hard because when you are doing that stuff, anyway, it's difficult. And that, I think, is what we're all should be trying to do, is not just getting better at things and doing more things, but getting other people better at things and doing things so that we can help each other. Like that's also like a part of mutual aid. I think sometimes mutual aid gets reduced to giving money to strangers on the internet. Right. I'm not saying that's bad, but that's like a unidirectional charity. And mutual aid should be in both directions. And right. Sometimes it is just skills. Sometimes it's doing the dishes for somebody. Sometimes it's taking out the trash for your neighbor. It is also giving money when people need it, but like you want to have relationships that enrich each other back and forth instead of just like pouring more out from yourself. Because we can all do more if I'm able to do things that I'm good at and you cook for me, and then someone else does the dishes. Whatever your thing is. Someone always has to get fed. Someone always has to do the dishes. You can always find a thing to do to plug in and be important, but we all need to be taking turns and nourishing each other instead of just sacrificing ourselves and running ourselves down.
Once again, going back to the anarchism, man, I fucking love it, dude. So I had this thought here, kind of more learning about what you guys do, and correct me if this is kind of a stupid thought, which it probably will be because I had it. Queer Satanic to me, I describe you guys as like satanic bakers because you guys have had a lot of fingers and a lot of satanic pies across the community. How long of a process was it for you guys to navigate the expanse of the community? Are you still finding areas that you haven't discovered yet? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I am constantly finding new things. I will say there are some aspects of Satanism that it feels like the more I learn, the more I hate them. I am someone who, people will use these things against me, but I'm pretty negative about Satanism. I say Satanism is cringe. Satanism, is the adoption of aesthetics of rebellion at the expense of action of rebellion. These are things that I notice a lot. But I'm still a Satanist. And I still am interested in these things. And by the way, I like a lot of cringe things, right? I think sometimes people hear that and they think this word is super negative, but I still like new metal. I will never not like new metal. I think Static X and Power Man 5000 are good. I can't ever stop. I listen to The Red Age. That is in me. That is in me for the rest of my life. It'll never come out.
Sai and myself, we had this bet to see how many consecutive episodes we could throw in Creed references. And I haven't done it yet. We still got 1.5 more questions. I'm going to try to, but we'll see. But no, what I was meaning, the different areas of it, God, I didn't know that, Cap area Satanists existed. Oh, here's another group. Or, oh shit, there's an Iowa branch off, or there's a South Dakota branch off. So you're now finding all these little splinter groups kind of.
Yeah, I think to better answer your question, maybe I do like to be aware of what people are doing in parts that I can connect people to each other who wouldn't know otherwise. And I think Global Order of Satan Still City has become a hub that I have tried to direct people to. Sometimes it's open. They seem to have a pretty good culture. It's like moderated. Like I'm giving them work sometimes, but like when people have questions, I want to meet other people and compare notes. It's a good place. But I like to just like be aware, like what people are up to, what their vibe is, so that if they're like working on something, they can meet someone else doing the same thing. Like for example, the grotto, the Satanic Grotto in Kansas. Michael Stewart is part of that same server. He's been around for a while, but he's doing cool things. As far as I know, they haven't needed help from anybody else. But I think if they did, if they weren't able to do everything with just their own resources, they would be plugged into a network now that could do those sorts of things. And I think they would find people that wanted to support them. For people who maybe are not aware of this, the Satanic Grotto in Kansas got approved to do a black mass inside the state capitol, and then Catholics kicked up a fuss. They had like 30,000 people sign a petition to like stop them, and so the governor revoked part of the permit and moved it outside and moved it to like the less prominent steps, and then the legislature passed a bill. Right, I can't say if it actually has been passed yet. They were working on a bill to make it so that no gatherings that were like disparaging to any group could happen at the Capitol, and they were saying the Black Mass was disparaging to Catholics, and the Catholics, the Archdiocese actually sued the Satanic Grotto and said that they had like stolen a consecrated cracker. You've seen this?
I've heard about this. Yeah.
They've been going through it, and as far as I can tell, I've been handling. They've had a lot of stuff to deal with, obviously, but they're not on their own. They can talk to other people, and I like being just in contact with people, even though like Michael Stewart and I are not friends. Like he's not someone who would reveal his like deepest emotions to me, but I became aware of him when he left TST. I think in 2020 over finding out that Doug Masigo had said the white nationalist stuff, like the eugenics, anti-Jewish, like goes into all that, but that was shocking to him in 2020 in ways that wasn't to everybody. And he and his group left and have done their own thing. And I've been in good enough contact with him just to like be somewhat aware of what they're doing. And I like to be able to do that, even though like I'm in Seattle, he's in Kansas, y'all are in Georgia. Sometimes there's nothing that can be done, but sometimes like you're traveling, like that's a cool thing to know. Or this art project is going on, or this like music thing, like the Satan Not Hated. That's a cool thing to know about. And then also just there are so many Satanists that like it's sort of like that thing when you listen to black metal and you're like, this is awesome. You Google it and it's just like, oh, they're Nazis. Dang.
Yeah.
Like, being able to like tell, oh, this is one of the Nazi Satanists again. Dang. That was a cool piece of art.
So I grew up a sharp punk, and so I don't know if I'm rehashing shit, but a sharp basically stands for skinhead against racial prejudice. And so there are some punk bands that kind of float through the ether that you come to find out later weren't as good as you originally thought. But the one that killed me the worst isn't even a skinhead band, the Misfits. Glenn Danzig, of course, he was part of, I think he was more associated with Church of Satan. The second lead singer, Michael Graves, what an arrogant piece of shit this guy turned out to be. And that was the version of the Misfits that I first heard. Yeah. I first heard, Famous Monsters. Then I went back and found Where Eagles Dare and Die, Die, My Darling. It was because of Michael Graves that I went back, and just due to the time it was like 95. I was 15. But like I went back and later found the Danzig. And I was like, I really loved the Michael Graves era Misfits until like 4 years ago. And I almost felt tricked because like I put so much time into it. Yeah. I was like, yeah, man, fucking Dig Up Her Bones. Great fucking tune. He's a Proud Boy. Shit. Yeah. He was like, motherfucker. Like the Proud Boys too. They're another group that I love to hate for multiple reasons. They're pieces of shit, but they stole the Sharps colors, yellow laces and black boots. Black and yellow. Those are the colors of the Sharps, and they turn it around for their own gain. I talked to Chris about this. I'm not going to go into that shit again. But yeah, no, I kind of know what you mean about like, if you look long enough, you will find things that are unsavory just about, with anybody that you kind of put stock in. But.
Well, I was saying that is just like, I think people often, when they are naive, think Christians bad. Satanists say they hate Christian must be good. But then you're like, okay, but what kind? Like, why do you hate Christians? Because sometimes it's like, well, they care too much about equality and egalitarianism. It's like, well, I don't hate those kind of Christians. Those are the ones that I was raised with. Like, I wasn't raised with the good ones necessarily.
I call those the Dolly Parton Christians.
Sure.
Perfect example. Hey, good on you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You're over there, reading the Bible. If you're a Dolly Parton Christian, keep doing what you're doing. We need more of you out there.
And like, I remember during 2020 when there were all of the Black Lives Matters protests going on, Church of Satan, I don't think said shit. They're like actively negative. TST was like silent. They're like, we're not going to say anything about this. We don't want to like identify with it. Which again, like they would like stick their fucking whole ass into the middle of abortion and make that worse. But I don't want to say racism and police brutality are bad. Right. That's not an apolitical stance they were taking. But at the same time, there were just like bog standard Protestant churches that were like, yeah, protesters can take refuge in our church. Yeah. That is to me more radical, more rebellious, more whatever than just like going, hell Satan and throwing up the horns and I don't think the aesthetics are bad, but like what I was saying before, people often use it as though it is a rebellious act in itself. And someone who is in khakis and a button-up that is willing to like film the cops, who is willing to do a free feeding, even as they're getting tickets from like the city of Houston. That is more rebellious than saying like, there is no Christ. There's no Christ. We get it. But like, what is he doing in the world?
Sure.
And I understand there are times when like, you were living under a theocracy where that is like an actual crime. To go back to Michael Stewart in the Grotto, his plan, the last I heard, was to go into the Capitol and get arrested if need be to fulfill the original permit. That takes bravery, right? A black mass is, symbolically rebellious, but being willing to actually like break the law and suffer from it, that is real rebellion. And the fact that he has a face tattoo and he has, all of the black and stuff, he looks the part, but he's also like living the part. And that to me is like the doing is the more important part.
Yeah. So we're going to wind down here. I really just have like one more question for you. And then we're going to kind of, we've been going for about 47 minutes. You guys, Queer Satanic kind of had a turbulent beginning or even a turbulent formation from what it's sounding like now. Now that things seem to have calmed down a little bit, where do you see the future for Queer Satanic? Is there any direction that you haven't gone yet that you kind of want to?
So after the last lawsuit ended, the one that finally, so this started in April of 2020. The last lawsuit finally ended in October of 2024. So that's 4.5 years. That's a long time.
Damn.
And when that happened, I just took a sabbatical from everything TST related. So I got involved in my labor union a lot more. I have met my neighbors. I am trying to like do things like, pick up packages for them. Like there's like a single mom and it's hard to like have a child on your hip and also carry big packages. Right. Make sure that like when someone needs groceries, those kinds of things. It'd be cool to have a tenants union that may not be realistic, but I have energy for those sorts of things now. And the Dead Domain video that now has like 200 and something thousand views, that's really penetrated the cultural consciousness in a way that nothing I had ever done previously had. So I was hoping that if I just like took a break, people would show up and like point out like, oh, hey, TST is actually not great. They don't win lawsuits. You don't know where the money's going. Like instead of just being this like the same viral posts and news stories, something would change. But I took a break and that just kept happening. And so I have had to like go back into doing that. But I am doing other things. Like now that I'm no longer being sued, I have so much more bandwidth for things in my life that need more people. And also I can still do some of this stuff where to some degree I'm the only one either doing it or pushing it. I would like for that not to happen. It would be so great for me to be able to do just like fun satanic things or just do, union things or like helping my, individual network prepare for all of the terrible things that are happening, right? Like things are going to get worse. And we gotta get better. And I don't know how close that is to happening. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out how I can pull other people in to actually have more of the keys to queer satanic stuff so that they can drive it. So like the Queer Satanic Twitch channel, we've been letting some people from capital area Satanists use it for their moon rituals. I could never do a ritual. It's pretty cool that they do that. Trying to like have more people create accounts on the Satanic Wiki and add to that and, curate that and keep it up. And then, I have enjoyed, though, being able to go, damn, Satanism in the 1980s and 90s was really shitty, huh? You just go through that because I read Spencer Sunshine's book and was like, holy crap, I didn't realize how central the Church of Satan was to publicizing the neo-Nazi James Mason's siege. Like that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so being able to go back through those things and just, do the boring research-based archival work, that I do actually enjoy. That's not a thing that is necessarily hard work for me. I enjoy that. But the other stuff, I'm hoping that there are enough people out there like you, like the rest of Global Order of Satan, like other independent groups, the Grotto and Capital Area Satanists, that are doing good things so that when people want to find Satanism, they can find something good and find community and have people who share their values and live those values. And hopefully at some point it will break through so that we stop having the same news story written that what if Satanists could save the day? It's like, that is not how it works. There is no one neat trick to stopping fascism. You got to show up and you got to be willing to suffer. And I think more of us just need to understand that if you fight, you might actually suffer. It doesn't mean you shouldn't fight. You just got to be prepared. Yeah.
Together we are what we can't be alone.
Yeah.
Fucking love that saying. And yeah, and also too, like what you were saying, like nobody is coming, nobody is coming to save the day. It's kind of up to you. If you fight, you're going to get lumps, you're going to get bruises, but it doesn't mean that the fight is not worth it and the fight is not necessary. Yeah. And somebody may see you there with a brick in your hand and go, he's fighting for the right side. I want to let me grab a brick. Now all of a sudden there's two bricks, to use a very, but I digress. But yeah, no, you will ultimately be showing people that the fight is worthy and the fight is necessary. So that will just in turn have the next people behind you coming up and pushing the line further that way too. Dude, I've had an amazing time. I can't believe that I was actually I was legit nervous for this episode. We were talking before the episode. I was like, dude, I'm not going to lie to you. This is the most nervous I've ever been for a podcast in my life. Just with your breadth of knowledge and your wide-reaching, to me, perceived wide-reaching, hands in Satanism. I was like, oh my God, I better do this shit right. And I told you, I was more scared to talk to you than I was Global Order of Satan UK top brass. They're the people that we've merged underneath. I was like, yeah, those are the bosses. Who cares? But I was like, this guy here, man, I need to get this shit right. I've had an amazing time talking to you, bud.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really not that scary. I've just had Satanism more than most people have for the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, man, I love what you're doing. I love you as a human being. I love that you're willing to take lumps to further the agenda. Not the agenda. That's a loaded word, but to further the
queer satanic agenda.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Sign me up, dude. The most cis white male you'll ever meet. Sign me the fuck up, dude. Here we go. So for those who don't, for those who might not know you and what you guys are all about, tell the public a little bit. Has Robert Evans would say this is time for your pluggables. Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you can go on to queersatanic.com. That is the website that has basically everything is linked there. It can be tough to navigate. So we also have a campsite bio. So that's campsite. campsite.bio/Queer Satanic. And then if you search Queer Satanic on most social media, we've tried to show up so people can tag us on things. I don't use TikTok. I do have an account there. When you introduced the whole thing, you're they're in all of this stuff. Not a ton of video content. I'm not a video person. I can talk, but I don't like to show my face. I don't know. I don't know if you're the same way.
I've always been told I have a face for podcasting. So yeah, no, I get what you mean for sure.
Yeah, but we're in all those places. If you have a question, usually can answer it. We probably have an article written about it already. And if you like us, you appreciate us, you feel that this was a worthwhile legal fight to have defended ourselves from, we do still have legal defense funds. We are still paying down our lawyers, but there are a lot of things going on right now. I get it. Like, there are a lot of worthwhile causes, but we do still appreciate people helping pay our legal defense. But mainly, be aware and share things like the Dead Domain video, the articles we've written. Just like these questions are not up in the air; they're not unanswerable. They have been answered, and more people need to know and make decisions based on that.
I didn't mention this, and we'll say this kind of in passing or in closing. The Dead Domain video was super important for the formation of the Free Society Satanist.
Oh, yeah.
Cy and I both watched that video, and I remember it greatly because I work at a job where if it's raining, you can't really work outside. I'm a land surveyor. So I was sitting in my work truck, pouring down rain, on a voice chat with Cy. And I was like, have you seen this video? Oh my God, this is the exact opposite of what I want the Free Society to be. We almost formed our codifying beliefs going against all the points in the Dead Domain video. So that video in and of itself was highly influential in the formation and the informative parts of the Free Society Satanist.
That's so cool to hear.
Yeah. So he gave you all the pluggables where you guys can find Queer Satanic. We're also going to have those in the show notes. So if you can't find them, don't worry about it. Just click the links below. But until next time, guys, before we go, by the way, dude, I love you, man. I love what you do. Kudos to you and keep fighting the good fight. But until next time, hail Satan and hail thyself.
Satan, 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 our Lord and Master,